The most terrifying TV hijack you've never heard of. What if I told you that in 1987, a television signal was hijacked for exactly 7 minutes and 23 seconds, broadcasting something so disturbing that the FCC sealed all records and the FBI investigation remains classified to this day? Grainy footage of old TV sets with static emergency broadcast system alerts, vintage newsroom footage dark, distorted transmission signals, old FCC documents with heavy redactions. What if I told you that 47 people called emergency services that night, all reporting the same thing? Children in their homes were speaking in voices that weren't their own, repeating phrases from a broadcast that officially never happened. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Signal 77. The most terrifying analog horror that actually occurred, and the reason why emergency broadcast systems were completely redesigned in the 1990s. Sound fades to uncomfortable silence with subtle static. Welcome to History in the Shadow. I'm Khalid, and this channel digs deep into the analog horrors, lost media, and disturbing broadcasts that mainstream media won't touch. If you're here for sanitized ghost stories, you're in the wrong place. We explore the documented anomalies that keep government officials awake at night. Before we begin, I need to warn you, the audio clips we'll be playing today are reconstructions based on witness testimonies. The original broadcast has never been released to the public. 3 researchers who claimed to have copies have since disappeared, and their materials were confiscated by federal agents. If you're ready to learn about the night that changed everything we thought we knew about television broadcasts, then let's begin. But remember, some knowledge comes with a price. The setup: March 15th, 1987. It's 11:47 p.m. on March 15th, 1987. Most of America is asleep, but in the small town of Millbrook, Indiana, something unprecedented is about to happen. The local TV station, WKRP-Channel 9, is running their usual late-night programming, old movies, and paid advertisements. The skeleton crew consists of just 2 people, night technician David Morrison and security guard Frank Shin. At exactly 11:52 p.m., David notices something strange on his monitoring equipment. The signal strength meters are showing impossible readings, transmission power levels that would require equipment the station doesn't possess. "Frank," David calls out, his voice tight with confusion. "Come look at this." But Frank is already staring at the wall of television monitors, his face pale. On every screen, the regular programming has been replaced by something else entirely. The screen shows what appears to be a children's educational program, but something is fundamentally wrong. The colors are too saturated, creating an almost hyper-real quality that hurts to look at directly. The set design looks like a kindergarten classroom, but the proportions are subtly off. The chairs are too small, the ceiling too low, creating a sense of claustrophobic unease. And then there's the host. The broadcast begins. The teacher, the figure on screen, appears to be a woman in her 30s, dressed as an elementary school teacher. She's wearing a bright yellow sweater and has perfectly styled brown hair. But her smile never changes, not once in the entire 7 minutes and 23 seconds of broadcast time. Her eyes, witnesses later reported, seem to look directly at them through the screen, maintaining eye contact no matter what angle they viewed from. "Hello, children," she says, her voice unnaturally clear and pleasant. "It's time for our special lesson tonight. Are you ready to learn something new?" The camera slowly zooms in on her face, and this is where multiple witnesses reported the same disturbing detail. Her lips don't quite sync with her words, as if the audio and video are slightly mismatched, creating an unsettling ventriloquist dummy effect. "Tonight we're going to learn about the spaces between," she continues, still smiling that unchanging smile. "The places where you go when you're not where you think you are." Behind her, barely visible in the stage classroom, children's drawings cover the walls. But as the camera occasionally pans across them, viewers begin to notice that these aren't typical children's artwork. The drawings show houses with too many windows, families with too many members, and skies with too many suns. "Can you see them?" the teacher asks. And for the first time, her head tilts slightly, not in a natural human manner, but like a bird examining prey. The extra children in your house? They've been waiting so patiently. This is when the first 911 call came in. The first wave of calls misses. Dorothy Fleming, 67, calls the Millbrook Police Department at 11:54 p.m. There are children in my house who don't belong here. They're sitting in my living room, watching television, and when I ask them who they are, they just smile and say they're learning about the spaces between. Please, I don't understand what's happening. Officer Mike Rodriguez takes the call and initially assumes it's either a break-in or the ramblings of an elderly woman experiencing confusion. But then more calls start coming in. 11:56 p.m., James Morrison, no relation to the TV technician, my 8-year-old daughter, is speaking in a woman's voice. She keeps repeating something about extra children and asking me if I can see them in the corners of the room. 11:57 p.m., Sarah Chun, this is going to sound crazy, but there are children in my kitchen that I know aren't mine, but I also know they belong here. It's like my brain is holding two contradictory truths at the same time. 11:58 p.m., Dr. Michael Stevens, the town physician. I need someone to explain to me why my medical training is telling me that the children in my house have anatomical features that shouldn't exist, but my eyes are seeing normal kids. The police dispatcher, Janet Morris, later reported that all the callers shared certain characteristics. They spoke in calm, measured tones despite describing impossible situations, and they all used similar phrasing, as if following a script they weren't aware of. Meanwhile, back at the TV station, David Morrison is frantically trying to cut the signal, but nothing works. The override switches do nothing. Unplugging the transmitter has no effect. The broadcast continues with mechanical precision. The lesson continues on screen. The teacher has moved to a chalkboard covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. They're not quite mathematical equations, not quite letters, but something that suggests meaning just beyond comprehension. Now class, she says, pointing to the symbols with a ruler that seems to extend farther than it should. Can you tell me how many children are in your family? She pauses, tilting her head in that unnatural bird-like manner again. Are you sure? Count again. Check the corners. Check the spaces between the furniture. Check the reflections in the windows. The camera pulls back to show the full classroom. And this is where the broadcast takes a turn into pure nightmare territory. The children's desks are occupied, but the students are barely visible. Translucent figures that seem to flicker in and out of existence. But worse than the ghost children are the empty desks that cast shadows as if someone is sitting in them. Very good, the teacher says, though no one has answered. I can see you're learning. The extra children have always been there. You just forgot how to see them. At this point, the audio begins to subtly distort. Not in the way that suggests technical difficulties, but in a way that makes the teacher's voice seem to come from inside the viewer's head rather than from the television speakers. Tonight's homework is very simple, she continues. Go to your family photographs. Count the people in them. Then count again tomorrow. Keep counting until the numbers match what you see. The investigation begins by midnight. The Millbrook police station has received 47 calls, all describing variations of the same impossible situation. Extra children in their homes who simultaneously don't belong and have always been there. Chief of Police Robert Hayes makes the decision to investigate personally. He drives to the Morrison house first, since David Morrison at the TV station is the only witness to the actual broadcast. But when Chief Hayes arrives, he finds David's house empty. The front door is unlocked, the television is on, showing static, and there's no sign of David or his family. More disturbing, there are 4 place settings at the dinner table, but David Morrison lives alone. Chief Hayes radios for backup and begins checking other addresses from the 911 calls. At every house, he finds the same thing. Families standing in their living rooms, staring at television screens, showing static, completely unresponsive to his presence. But in each house, there are signs of more people than should live there. Extra toothbrushes in bathrooms, additional beds in bedrooms, photographs showing more family members than the homeowners remember having. At the Chun house, Mrs. Chun answers the door normally, but insists that her 3 children have always been 4 children, and becomes agitated when Chief Hayes suggests otherwise. You can see them, "Can't you?" she asks, pointing to 3 children watching television in the living room. All 4 of them. Chief Hayes sees 3 children, but there are 4 shadows on the wall. The signal ends, but the effects remain at exactly 12:15 a.m. The broadcast ends as abruptly as it began. The television screens across Millbrook return to normal programming, but the damage is done. Over the following weeks, federal investigators arrive in town. They identify themselves as FCC officials, but local law enforcement notices they carry credentials from agencies that don't officially exist. The investigation is thorough and terrifying. Every family that called 911 that night is interviewed extensively. Every interview is classified immediately after completion. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychiatrist brought in by the federal team, later wrote in her heavily redacted report, "The affected individuals show no signs of psychosis, delusion, or mass hysteria. They describe a reality that differs from documented facts, but they describe it with complete consistency and evident sincerity. More disturbing, physical evidence supports their altered memories. The federal investigators photograph every affected household. In each photo, there are unexplained shadows, extra reflections in mirrors, and anomalies that suggest the presence of people who aren't visible to the camera. Most unsettling of all, when the investigators compare the current family photographs in these homes to older photos of the same families, the older photos have changed. Pictures that previously showed 3 family members now show 4. Wedding photos include guests that the bride and groom don't remember inviting. The lead investigator, identified only as Agent Morrison in the declassified portions of the report, writes, "We are dealing with something that has the ability to retroactively alter reality, changing not just perception, but historical fact. Recommend immediate classification at the highest level." The cover-up and aftermath within 6 months. Every family affected by the broadcast has been relocated. Official records show they were offered generous government compensation packages for voluntary participation in a classified telecommunications research project. The WKRP-Channel 9 station is shut down permanently. The official reason given is equipment failure leading to safety concerns, but the building is demolished within weeks of the incident. David Morrison and Frank Shunn, the 2 station employees who witnessed the broadcast firsthand, are never seen again. Their families are told they've been transferred to classified positions with the federal government. But here's where the story gets even more disturbing. When investigators try to trace the source of the hijack signal, they discover it originated from a transmission tower that was demolished in 1973. The tower's location? The exact spot where Millbrook Elementary School was built in 1962. A school that was abandoned in 1985 after reports of unusual psychological effects on children, including students reporting extra classmates that teachers couldn't see. Federal investigators searching the abandoned school find a classroom in the basement that doesn't appear on any architectural plans. The classroom is set up exactly like the one shown in the broadcast. Tiny desks, a chalkboard covered in incomprehensible symbols, and children's drawings showing impossible realities. In the center of the teacher's desk, they find a television set that shouldn't work. It has no power source and no antenna. But when Agent Morrison approaches it, the screen flickers to life for exactly 7 seconds, showing the same smiling teacher. "Hello again," she says, looking directly at Agent Morrison. Class is always in session. The screen goes dark, and the television crumbles to dust. The modern implications, the Signal 77 incident led to massive changes in broadcast regulation and emergency response protocols. The emergency broadcast system was completely redesigned with new safeguards, though the official reasons given had nothing to do with the Millbrook incident. But more disturbing is what researchers have discovered in recent years. Using modern digital analysis techniques on surveillance footage from the affected homes, investigators have identified patterns that suggest the extra children were always there. They just existed in a frequency of reality that human perception normally filters out. The broadcast didn't create these entities. It simply taught people how to see them. Dr. Janet Hoffman, a parapsychologist who has studied the declassified portions of the Signal 77 files, theorizes that human consciousness has built-in mechanisms to ignore certain aspects of reality that would be psychologically damaging to perceive directly. What happened in Millbrook, she writes, was essentially a mass forced evolution of human perception. The affected individuals were compelled to see reality as it actually exists, rather than the filtered version our brains normally provide. This theory becomes more unsettling when you consider the implications. If the extra children were always there, always have been there, then they're everywhere. In every family, every classroom, every photograph. We just don't know how to see them yet. Conclusion. The question that remains, the Signal 77 incident remains one of the most thoroughly documented and simultaneously most classified events in American broadcast history. The few declassified documents raise more questions than they answer, and the families involved have never spoken publicly about their experiences. But here's what keeps researchers awake at night. Similar incidents have been reported in other small towns across America, always involving educational broadcasts that teach children about the spaces between and the extra ones who have always been there. Most of these reports are dismissed as hoaxes or mass hysteria, but they all share the same specific details that mirror the Millbrook incident exactly. The federal response has been consistent: immediate classification, relocation of affected families, and systematic destruction of all physical evidence. The question isn't whether Signal 77 was real. The documented evidence is overwhelming. The question is whether it was an isolated incident or part of something much larger and more systematic. Something that's still happening. Something that's teaching us to see what was always there, waiting in the spaces between what we think we know and what actually exists. Call TO action if this story disturbed you as much as it disturbed me to research. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're building a community of people who aren't afraid to look into the dark corners of documented reality. Give this video a thumbs up if you think the public deserves to know the full truth about Signal 77. And leave a comment telling me what you think. Are these extra children real entities that exist in parallel to our reality? Or are they psychological manifestations created by mass suggestion? But here's the question I really want you to consider, and I want you to think carefully before you answer in the comments. When you look at your old family photographs tonight, will you count the same number of people you remember being there? And if the count is different, what will you do? Check the description for links to the declassified documents I referenced. And remember, some knowledge can't be unlearned. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore another case of reality alteration that the government doesn't want you to know about. Sleep well, and don't forget to check the corners.